All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening again. My name is Tim Weber. I am the superintendent for Wyoming City Schools. And I first of all just want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules on a beautiful night, another beautiful night, to be here for this very important conversation. Our students tell me all the time, they remind me how many days we have less, how many wake-ups, how many lunches, how many ends, how many bus pickups, whatever that may be. It is 7. So I know that with 7 days to go, 7 in terms of whatever those are, you have very, very busy schedules. So thank you. You know, we talk about community engagement and how critical it is to the process. And so again, just want to thank you for being here and spending your time with us tonight. We had our last community forum on March 4th. And a lot has happened in just a short time between March 4th and now. And so I'm excited to be able to share the progress that's been made and really the direction that's been set within this work since that March 4th timeframe. So in the conversation tonight, in our forum, you will hear an update from our architect, Mike Richley. First and foremost, he will be reviewing the overall process that we've utilized this year, where we are within that process. He'll talk about the highlights from a statistically representative survey that was conducted in March, and we finished that right before spring break. Mike will also share the direction of our master planning process based on all of that information, and he'll be talking about current considerations for something that we call swing space. And swing space is it's the location of our students during the point of construction. So we've had lots of questions about swing space, so I'm excited for him to speak to that. And then finally, Mike will share a timeline, a suggested timeline for the project. You will also hear from our treasurer, Rhonda Johnson, and she will be sharing financial information related to the master planning process, so I know that's important and people want to hear about that. And then when we're finished, just like we did if you were here for our previous community forum, we have many of our primary facility steering committee members here. We'll have them come up to the front, and if anyone has questions, they'd like to interact with any of those committee members, you'll be able to do that, again, to ask questions or to share feedback and just have a more personal conversation about the work that's going on with regard to our primary facilities. So again, thank you for coming here tonight, and look forward to sharing all this information with you. At this point, I'd like to invite Mike Richley of Richley Architects.
Thank you, Tim. My name is Mike Richley, and it's great to be with you again. Tim outlined the agenda, so we'll go over these points tonight. But primarily the 3 big things that we're going to leave you with tonight is what is the master plan, how much is it going to cost, and what is your plan to implement it. So with that information, you can head into your summer, and then we'll reconvene next fall for some more information. First on the process, we met back in the fall. We talked about a process that would consider a whole number of options. At the time, there were 8 master planning options that were on the table. We had engagement, we did a traffic analysis, we did a geotechnical report. We got our hands around what the potential budget could be for the project. The facility steering committee began their work, as well as work with the Board of Education and Community Forum number 1. And then in March, we came back and we said, hey, the result of the work between fall and early spring was we are now down to 2 options. So that's where we were at our last meeting, continued engagement with the facility steering committee meeting on that process and to narrow to those 2, as well as the board. And then we had our last committee forum, after which we said we are going to follow up with a statistically valid community survey to kind of provide some data points on guidance moving forward. So we'll report on that tonight. And then here we are late spring 2024. We will be presenting the final plan to you tonight in terms of the direction with input from the steering committee and the board. And then the board will be in a position to June timeframe consider the go-no-go decision on putting this issue on the ballot in November of 2024. Before we get into the survey results, I'd like to introduce Rhonda with some finance updates.
Good evening, my name is Charlotte Johnson, and I serve as the district treasurer. As Mike mentioned, when we were in phase one, much of the work we did was to identify the budget for the project. And the budget is a factor that's based on our valuation. So we add up all of the homes and commercial industrial properties in the district, and then we run through a mathematical calculation. That generates our maximum ability to borrow. And so that generated the budget for our project. And so our budget is $68.4 million. And so when we think about building primary schools with a budget of $68.4 million, that is accomplished through a school district bond issue. And bond issues are property tax levies for a specific dollar amount where you borrow money to finance construction. And then you pay it off over the next, in our case, 37 years. That might sound super similar to something that you're familiar with in your home life, like your mortgage, right? You would borrow a large amount, and then you would pay off your mortgage over the next 30 years. That's exactly how bond issues work. And in school communities, the principal and interest payments on the debt or on the bond are paid annually with the tax revenue that is collected. And taxes are assessed. Most people are pretty familiar with these concepts. Taxes are assessed annually in terms of millage. A mill is defined mathematically in Ohio statute as 1/10 of 1%, or $1 per thousand of assessed value. And the way that a mill generates revenue for a school district is that it is multiplied times your property. And so, super simple math here. If you have a $100,000 home or $100,000 assessed value, 1 mill would cost the owner of a $100,000 home $35 per year. So we'll work through another example in a second. So we've done this twice in recent history. We have 2 outstanding bond issues. We have a high school issue that was passed in 1998, was voted by the taxpayers at 8.2 mils, a $24 million bond issue, currently being collected at 3.36 mils. As property values go up, the rate has come down in order to make the principal and interest payments on the debt. It's important to remember that we are paying off this debt in December of 2024, so really excited to be at the end of our mortgage, as most people are when you get to the end of your mortgage. It's a really exciting time. We've been making all of those principal and interest payments over the life of this debt, and due to some good stewardship and some refunding, we're actually paying it off 3 years early. We also have a current bond issue outstanding for the middle school. Voters approved a 4.79 mil bond issue in 2012, a $25 million bond issue for additions and renovations to our middle school. Currently being collected at 2.64 mils, and we've got quite a few more years to go on this one. So we're not quite paying this one off yet. And so when we think about our primary projects coming in at about $68.4 million, what would that cost to our homeowners? And that's estimated to be about a 7.5 mil tax levy. But again, remember that we have that high school debt coming off. We're paying off our high school bond issue or our high school mortgage in calendar year 2024. So when we're thinking about a November bond issue for our primary schools, that tax collection would begin in January. We would no longer be paying the high school debt. So the high school rolls off. And so while the full amount on the ballot will say approximately 7.53 mils, when it comes time to actually pay the tax bills, 3.36 mils of those are coming off. So the net amount to voters is only 4.17 mils. And so when we think about what that might actually cost you, on a $100,000 home, then the gross, so before we kind of do the math and back out at the high school coming off, the gross is about $264, again, $100,000 home. We're very clear that there are homes of other values, but that's some easy math that you can work through. But then when you back off that high school debt, the net cost is about 4.17 mils, so about $146 a year for a $100,000 home. If you think about, again, homes of other values, easy examples here. So a $200,000 home would be about $292 a year. A $400,000 home would be about $585 a year. And so if you think about what a monthly cost might be, it's less than $50 a month. And so sometimes those figures are just easier to think about when we think about how that might impact your monthly budget or your annual budget. Oops, sorry, Mike, I want to go back and talk about one more thing. There are a couple steps in the process as we work through the financing of this master plan. There are a number of actions that will be required by our Board of Education to take place during June and July. Getting on the ballot for a bond issue is a very regulated process in Ohio statute. So over the next few months, our board will be working through that process. Again, a number of resolutions that will be adopted in June and July that get forwarded and then approved by the Ohio Department of Education, the Ohio Department of Taxation, the county auditor, and then finally the Board of Elections. So we'll be staying connected with the community through social media and our communication tools, so you can follow along as we move through that process. But when we come back to school on August 14th-ish, something like that, by the time we come back to school on August 14th, the board will have completed that process and we will be on track for a November 5th bond issue for our primary schools. And so with that, I think that we are ready to hear back from Mike on the community survey results that finalize the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. The survey had a bunch of questions, answers, and I would recommend, if you'd like more detail, point you to the district website. There was a whole YouTube video presentation from the surveyor, Paul Fallon, that you can see on the district website. But just to remind you, the two options that were surveyed, one of them we called option blue, and this was the option that has 3 new K4s replacing existing buildings as they are today. And the second option we called option white, which were 2 new K2s, one at Vermont and one at Elm, and a new district-wide 3-4 at Hilltop. So that was the heart of the survey, is what was the community's opinion of those 2 options. Paul Fallon is a public opinion researcher. This was the result of 207 surveys of adults 18 years and older. The survey was conducted between March 5th and the 19th, and there's a 6.81% sampling error in terms of confidence. So with that, the question was, do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea to replace all 3 of the current primary schools with new kindergarten through 4th grade buildings that would be located at the same locations? So again, this is option blue. This was 3 new K4s. From that question, 60% said it was a good idea, 24% said it was a bad idea, and 16% were unsure. The second question, and these were rotated back and forth. Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea to replace all 3 of the current primary schools with a new kindergarten through 2nd grade school building at Elm, a new kindergarten through 2nd grade school building at Vermont, and a new school building for the 3rd and 4th grades at Hilltop? So this was the option white, 2 new pre-K2, 2 new K2s and a 3-4. 35% said good idea, 46% said bad idea, and 19% were unsure. Okay, so on the K4s, 60% said good idea, and on the K2s, 3-4, 35% said good idea. So that information was shared with the board, with the primary facility steering committee, and the decision was to move forward with option blue. So this is the final master plan. It's 3 new K4s, a new K4 at Vermont, a new K4 at Elm, and a new K4 at Hilltop. And the crowd went wild. This is the budget, which you've seen before. For the 3 new K4s, you see the square footage for each building and the total, the cost per square foot, so total about $60.7 million for the new construction itself. We have to abate and demolish the 3 existing school buildings at around $1.1 million budget. And then we need to provide temporary schools, swing space for all 3 buildings during construction. So we have a $6.5 million budget for that, all in just under $68.4 million for the budget. Options for temporary schools. Now, I did ask in my first 2 meetings if anyone wants a temporary school in the front yard or backyard? Raise your hand. And I didn't get too many respondents, but we have been looking and looking. And as a reminder, the community has done this before with the middle school, where we built a temporary middle school at the site of the high school baseball field for 600 middle school students. So we built that temporary middle school, all middle school students moved into here, and then the renovation addition happened at the middle school and they moved back. So this community has been through that experience before, and these are modular buildings. So an actual building with a hallway and doors and classrooms, heat and air conditioning, restrooms, etc. We've looked high and low for months and months and months, and I'm going to give you just kind of a synopsis of where we are at this point with the modular swing space journey. So starting on the left, Hilltop Park. The city was gracious and offered Hilltop as an option. So theoretically, we could build a temporary school at Hilltop Park, move the Hilltop students into the temporary school, abate, demolish, build a new school at Hilltop, and then move them back from the park into the school and then restore the park. There are pros and cons with every single one of these options. The pro of that is it's really close, congruent right next to the existing building. Some of the cons are it needs to be bigger because it's not adjacent to any other existing facilities. If you remember in the middle school example that you went through, middle school students went into the high school for things like gym and some of those things. And when you're kind of floating on an island park, while the green space is nice, where do you go for those activities? So the modulars need to grow a little bit in size. And also the infrastructure costs relative to parking, drop off and pick up all gets pretty expensive at Hilltop. Next we looked at St. James. St. James parking lot would be great for a single 10 classroom modular building. Students could have gone in there and used their gymnasium, student dining room, etc. That option was explored pretty thoroughly, and at the end, the result was based on the nuances of the contract language with the Archdiocese, the school just couldn't essentially approve that contract. So I'll kind of leave it at that. So St. James is no longer an option. We did explore the Civic Center, putting a modular building in the green space to the south, and then using the Civic Center for things like student dining and gym. That was a decent option. However, the Civic Center is a widely used community asset, and the thought of that being offline for one phase or two phases of this didn't seem like the best idea. We looked at Grove Park. Grove Park has nice green space. The challenges with Grove Park was the roadway access back here is at Durrell. It's pretty narrow, 27 feet wide, and the thought of two-way traffic in Durrell is a challenge. And also, when considering this, the facilities committee we're concerned about the fact that this is a park directly along the railroad tracks. We looked at Crescent Park, just to its north, has the same railroad tracks issue as Grove Park, and that is a bit smaller. We could have fit a 12 classroom mod there. However, that's not large enough for any of the schools, so it would have been a partial school solution. And the more sites you have, the more temporary school sites you have, the higher the cost. Because the largest cost with a temporary school is the setup, infrastructure, utilities, delivery, and then once they're set up, the monthly lease is not the big cost compared to the mobilization and the demobilization. So in any of these concepts, fewer sites were better than more sites because that would come in at a cost somewhere between $1 and $2 million less in our work. So where are we? We have landed at the middle school and back at the high school. Those are two sites that we believe are viable, that we are leaning into for this plan. How that would work would be a multi-phased approach. So in the first phase, we would build Hilltop. The thought behind that is it's the largest project on the steepest site. It's a school building that is disconnected, so it's open, and there's issues around being outdoors. Also, it's a site that struggles with the most ADA issues because there's all the different levels. So we thought we'd tackle Hilltop first, build a temporary school for Hilltop, at the high school softball field. Hilltop moves to the high school, and we begin the construction of that phase. When that's complete, Hilltop moves back into their new building, and we begin phase 2. With phase 2, Vermont would move over to the high school softball field in the same building that Hilltop just vacated, and we would install a new secondary school, or a second phase school for Elm at the middle school. Some more details here. So at the high school, you might recall, the middle school sat on a baseball field, and while surely that was an inconvenience, at the end of the day, the baseball field was rebuilt and restored better than it was before. So the vision here would be the same, that we would put modulars back on the softball field, and then when we were done, we would rebuild and restore that better than it was before. One of the benefits now is that the Champion Center is constructed. We have a lot of infrastructure costs that went in to support that. You've got power, you've got fire department connections, you've got water. And also this building serves as a nice asset for a modular building to be next to. Things like students going in and having larger spaces for activities. So that's the site on the left. And then on the right is the backyard of the middle school. And we're envisioning 2 sites for this. One is an 8-classroom building on a portion of the parking lot here, and the other one is an 8-classroom building on the green space just south of the outdoor cooling tower. We do have a large portion of this grass that has an underground stormwater detention basin in it, so we just need to make sure we stay off of that. So how that could look like at the high school are 2 10-classroom modular buildings that would service Hilltop in phase 1 and service Vermont in phase 2. And then at the middle school, for phase 2, we would pull in 2 8-classroom buildings, one on this side on the parking lot and one on this side. And the benefits here, similar to the high school, is the students could go into the middle school for things like the gymnasium and student dining, etc. Here's some diagrams just to help kind of get our brains around this. On the left side is the Hilltop existing floor plan. And on the right side is, you can see how that can be spaced in 2 10-classroom modular buildings. So this building would be for grades 3 to 4 with some art, music, and clinic, and grades K to 2. So all the classrooms would be accounted for. And again, the gymnasium and the larger spaces would go across the street to the Champion Center. Vermont. Vermont's needs are just a pair of classrooms at each grade level, 1, 2, 3, and 4, some special ed, library, intervention, art, music, clinic, office, and I will mention all of these have restrooms inside them. And then Elm, and the existing Elm footprint on the left, and the 2 8-classroom modular building concept for grades K to 2 on one side and 3 to 4 on the other. So I hope that gave you a visual of how we could possibly pull this off. And next I wanted to lay it out on a timeline, because it's kind of confusing to put all this in your head. So bond issue, if the board decides to push this forward, would be November of 24. An architect would be hired and selected, and the design process would be approximately a year. So in the 2025 year, we'd be in the design phase. We'd also be designing the modular temporary school at the high school. The modular building would be installed in late 2025 and be up and running for a Christmas break move, where Hilltop would move into the temporary Hilltop school at the high school. They move into the high school for their 18-month duration, and then we're back on that site demolishing and constructing the new building. And after Hilltop is built, Hilltop moves into their new school, they vacate the high school site, and Vermont moves in for its 18-month duration, as well as Elm. Elm gets installed at the middle school for its 18-month duration. And then Elm moves into the middle school, Vermont moves into the high school, and we begin the 18-month construction cycle for Elm and Vermont. And in that December January timeframe of 28, 29, Elman, Vermont moves back into the new schools, and the temporary schools are demobilized. So I know I hit you with a lot. Next steps, always look to the district website for more information. This meeting, all previous meetings, the survey meetings, all that are online there for you to review. The board will be in a position for a final master plan approval next month. And then in the fall, committee number 4 will happen. And this forum, we're going to show conceptual site plans, conceptual floor plans. So the goal would be heading into the election, the community has the clearest vision possible of what the plan is, how much it's going to cost, how we're going to technically pull it off, and then generally what it's going to look like. What are these buildings going to offer? And then community vote, November 5th, 2024. Good.
Thank you, Mike. Again, lots of information, and appreciate you being here tonight. And Mike, you shared this. I would say, you know, going back to our website would be very helpful. You can go back and review the work over the past 2 to 3 years, going back to our Citizens Advisory Committee just to see studies that really began the process. And you can walk through all of the conversations that have taken place up until this point. You'll see lots and lots of data, lots and lots of feedback on our website, so I would encourage you to check that out. It's an exciting time. I know you didn't get a round of applause, but it is an exciting time. We've done a lot of work to understand, you know, the needs of our students and the thoughts of our community. And so tonight's I think it's a big night. It's a big time for us to be aligned in listening to that feedback and determining a path that I think supports that feedback. With that said, I know you might have questions. If you do, I'm going to encourage our primary facility steering committee members to come on down. So feel free to stick around and connect with any one of our committee members. You'll see a name tag like this on our committee members, but please come on down. We will also make sure that the videotape of this conversation, just like the previous community forums, is posted online, and we'll also have the slide deck online with that, just like all the other conversations. Okay, that's the end of the presentation.